It wasn't until my late 20s and when I got into stand-up, and I think this is another benefit of doing stand-up, is I started to really find out who I really am. Because when I started comedy, I thought I was going to be an edgy, dark guy or whatever. And then as soon as I started, I was like, that's not who I am. And then I kind of figured out what I was through it. And what I figured out was what sets me apart, what makes me different from a lot of the comedians I do comedy with is my background.
Shalom everyone, it's Adessa here with the Assyrian podcast, bringing you episode 219 with Chris Halef. I've been a longtime follower of Chris's work, especially because it was so exciting to discover we have an Assyrian living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is rare. I came to appreciate how he weaves bits and pieces of his cultural background into his sets for audiences who would likely never know who Assyrians are. Between his radio career and his time on stage, Chris is no stranger to a microphone, and honestly, one of the easiest guests I've had the pleasure of interviewing. In this episode, we get into his family's background and their journey to Halifax, his love for comedy, what performing can teach anyone willing to get on stage, and what's next for him. Thank you to Get Set Tech for making this conversation possible. Their support helps us continue sharing the stories and history of the Assyrian people. You can learn more about them at www.getsettech.com. And now, without further ado, here's Chris Halef. Chris, welcome to the Assyrian podcast.
No, thank you for having me.
Yuk Yuk's website describes you as Chris Halef, a comedy sensation who's been featured at the Halifax Comedy Fest, Just for Laughs Originals, and can be heard daily on News 95.7 radio. Chris brings his sharp wit and relatable humor to the stage for an unforgettable evening of laughs. How would you describe yourself?
Well, that wasn't me who wrote that. I just want to point that out right there. I have a comedy bio that I wrote, and the Yuk Yuk's booker was just like, I'm just going to write something up for you. And it is funny because they also included my day job there, which I'm a news anchor for Rogers News 95.7. And it's so funny because it's like, I'm literally reading the news verbatim, and the news is never good, and nobody's going to want to hear the news and think, I want to hear this guy's take on dating. You know what I mean? So it's so weird that was included. But yeah, I mean, like I would probably agree with pretty much most of that. I don't know how sharp I am, but I definitely do love to tell stories, and I love to talk about my upbringing and my background, my life in general. I talk about everything too. It's not just, I don't just get up there and just talk about my ethnic background or anything like that. That's actually a small part of, like, if I'm doing an hour at Yuk Yuk's, maybe 12 minutes is that, and then the rest is just everything else. So yeah, I'm good.
All right, I love that. Speaking of your background, tell me about your family's background and how you ended up in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
So my mom and dad, they were born in Midyat, Turkey, which is in the southeast part of Turkey in Mardin province. And so
I visited there before.
You got me beat. I've never been there. How was it?
Beautiful. Not a lot of our people there, which was a little bit sad, but a lot of historical remnants are still alive and well in Midyat.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like my mom, she went back this past summer and said something to that effect. She'll run into like some old family members and all that stuff, but apparently like the change it went through from when they grew up there to what it is now is huge. It's like a hub almost. And I guess they shoot a lot of Turkish soap operas around that area now too, which is pretty crazy. Like my mom will like be watching it on Netflix and be like, look, I know that place. And I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. But they grew up there, and then my dad's family, they immigrated from Midyat to Canada, Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where I live. And they immigrated there when my dad was about 13. And my mom's family, they left Midyat probably around the same time and immigrated to Memmingen, Germany, which is about an hour away from Munich. And they immigrated there. And so what happened was, when it came time for my dad to get married, which in our culture was 18 years old, it was like, all right, it's time for you to start a family and get a job. They were like, is there anybody that you want to, because we never really had arranged marriages, but it was more like, is there somebody from back home that you knew? And my mom and my dad went to elementary school together. My dad always had a little crush on my mom. And so he was like, yeah, I know exactly who. And he went to Germany for a couple months to essentially, start a dialogue. And the year after that, they got married. A year after that, they had my older brother. And 2 years after that, they had me. And then been living in Halifax ever since.
Wow. Tell me more about your dad's immigration story to Halifax specifically, because I'm not so familiar with that migration route. I do know that there's a lot of Assyrians from Southeast Turkey that migrated to Germany,
Yes.
and different parts of Europe. But tell me a little bit more about, at least what you know about how your dad chose, or was the decision chosen for him? Because I know sometimes when they're placed, they have to live somewhere specifically, or how did he end up in Halifax?
So it was chosen for him. So his whole family went down, essentially following my uncle, my ummo, who is the oldest of the siblings, and he was deciding on where he wanted to go to school, essentially, because he was living in Switzerland at the time. He only told me this story recently, actually. He went to the Canadian embassy in Switzerland because he was just walking by it, and I don't know what it was. I mean, he just said like, yeah, I want to move to Canada. It was just a weird spur of the moment type of thing. And he's like, I want to go there to St. Mary's University. And so he moved to Halifax and everybody followed suit. So that's how they all ended up over there. They were just following my uncle, essentially. Don't get me wrong, I love Canada. I love Halifax. There's always a part of me that anytime it gets really cold outside, like it is right now, I'm like, I wish you chose someplace a little bit warmer. But I do love it here. I truly love. I love where they chose, and I grew up here most of my life. I lived in Toronto for a couple of years as well, but yeah, I love Canada in general. It's just amazing. But that's how they ended up over here. Yeah.
For listeners that are unfamiliar with kind of the geography of where Nova Scotia
Yep.
is, could you describe it for them?
Absolutely. So Nova Scotia is on the east coast of Canada. So it's like the furthest east other than maybe Newfoundland. Like you would know this because you live in Hamilton. But for anybody who doesn't know the geography of Canada or what Halifax is like, I guess the closest comparison would be like it's like Canada's Boston in a lot of ways, just both in landscape, and it's a fisherman town. It's a Navy city as well. It's beautiful during the summertime. It's beautiful during the winter too, but obviously everything is beautiful in the summertime. And yeah, we're on the very far east. So it's a city, but it's not like a big city. It's a city with a small town vibe. So like if I go out to like, the North End here or something like that, I'll always walk into people I know and all that stuff. And I could be anywhere in the city and see people I know. It's got that kind of nice communal vibe to it, which I really like.
Love that. Yeah, it kind of hangs over. It's even further east than the East Coast that people might be familiar with the U.S. It's
Yep.
even further in the Atlantic.
Yep.
Haven't had a chance to visit yet, but it's on my list, especially because it's one of the cities that the Hamilton Airport here flies directly
Yeah,
into.
that's right.
Do we have a community there?
Not really. I mean, so what's interesting about it is the only people I know in my community is my family. And in terms of, it is funny because I listened to your episode with Paul Elia, and he was talking about the kind of divide with Chaldeans and who are more resistant to identify as Assyrians. It's very similar within my community as well, where there's a lot of we're part of the Syriac Aramean kind of sect of things, and there's still resistance there as well, where they're like, no, we're our own thing, we're not that. And I've looked into it and I've done enough research to be comfortable in saying it's like they're all right, but I also understand that we're part of the same ethno-religious group. So in terms of people who are Assyrians, Arameans, or Syriacs, or even Chaldeans, very, very little over here. There's not much. It's just my family. So it's like me, my mom, my dad, my brother, my uncles, and that's that's about it. I've never had that where I run into somebody and they speak my dialect of Aramaic. I've never had that. It's always somebody who's like a family member. I've never had a random encounter. So I get jealous anytime I hear those stories. I'm like, it'd be so nice to just like go to a Starbucks and just like suddenly hear somebody and be like, oh my God. But no, it's just my cousin.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And any of our churches or anything like that? Like, do we have like, let's say, Syriac Orthodox or Syriac Catholic churches there? Okay.
No, no Syriac Orthodox, no Syriac Catholics. The church that we go to, the one that I was baptized in, is a Orthodox church, but it's Lebanese Orthodox church. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
like they're the closest thing we have to, like, our people here. And so I have a lot of Lebanese friends. They're the largest Middle Eastern group in Halifax for sure. So we grew up with them, and when we go to the church, that's the one we go to. That's one we were baptized at, but we don't have any specific for our people.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. What gave you the love for stand-up comedy? When did the journey begin for you?
Man, that's it's interesting. I don't know. I would say I've always loved comedy. I remember my dad, he's funny in the sense that, like, I don't know if you're a parent or anything like that, but when you have kids, you have to like watch things that they like with them or whatever, like growing up. So you're like watching, like, like it could be like K-pop Demon Hunter today or something like that. And my dad very quickly, I think, realized that he found that boring. And he was like, I'm just going to start watching Goodfellas and Scarface with my 4-year-old child. And then it escalated to watching Chris Rock specials and watching early Dave Chappelle specials. I remember Dave Chappelle's first special, Killing Him Softly, was huge for me because I remember he had this bit on there about a baby who sold crack at 3 a.m. that I would quote to my friends. And that was my earliest form of like stand up, in a way where I was like, because I could remember quotes from movies and comedians very vividly. So I'd be able to recite them as is, and always got laughs at like that. But it wasn't until I watched Russell Peters, and he did a special in Canada. It was a Comedy Now special. This is before he was famous. It was the one that had that bit about his like white people should hit their kids or whatever. And he's talking about like his dad. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a hilarious bit. And I remember watching it and just like beat for beat, just thinking, I've had all these thoughts. Like, literally, like, I would go over to my Canadian friends' places and they would talk to their parents with such disrespect. And I'd be like, they're going to kill you. And they're like, no, they're not. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that with my parents. Never did that again. I don't remember what happened exactly. Shuck mode. Like, they just beat the hell out of me. And yeah, I remember I saw that. I was like, that's hilarious. It's like, because I've had that thought and it planted a seed. And then for years had passed. And I never did it. I never did comedy. And I remember I always wanted to. And it wasn't until I was 28 where I finally had kind of the guts to do it. Because, like I said, I work in journalism, for people who don't know. And a few weeks before my first set, I won an award for a story. I won an award in journalism. And then people were telling me, like, this is big, this is huge, this is like, what all of us are working towards and all that stuff. And I remember I felt good about it, but then there was part of me that was just like, I don't know, I just feel like a little bit like underwhelmed. Like, and then I remembered stand up and I was like, I've always wanted to try that. So I went down to an open mic and I bombed so badly. Like, I'm not lying when I tell you, I was god awful when I started. I didn't get a laugh for like the first few months because I didn't know what I was doing up there. And I was just stubborn, just like our people. Like, I was just a stubborn guy, and I was like, no, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep pursuing it. And then year after year, things got better, and I got better. And now I'm about 8 years in, and things are starting to happen. Things are starting to get a little bit more, like, oh, wow, this is possible.
Something I find really intriguing about comedians is that, like, we live in a world right now where so many people are scared to connect, to communicate with others, to be rejected, or anything that's uncomfortable. They just shy away from. And comedians are just like, yeah, screw that. I'm going to crush all of these things that most people are scared of, public speaking, possible rejection, connection with the audience on the spot. Like, comedians need to be studied. Like, how do you push through all of these uncomforts, and like, what can society learn from how comedians approach things?
That is interesting. You are absolutely right. One thing that I know comedy has done for me is it's made me bulletproof to embarrassment, because you get up there and you're just bearing your soul, talking about your thoughts. And if people aren't reacting, it is So to this day, like if I go up and I'm working on new material and it's not landing, I feel like I just caught in my underwear. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed right now. But I don't know if everybody should try to do like a stand-up set at some point, but I do think by doing it, you're conquering a lot of fears all at once. Like you said, the public speaking thing, embarrassing yourself, failing, which, make no mistake, even if you had a good set, like for your first time, you're still failing in a lot of ways because you're not good yet. You're showing you're still like, starting or whatever. But I think that it is very helpful to be able to like do something, and it doesn't even have to be stand up, but something kind of stand up adjacent where, yeah, you kind of, you check off a lot of boxes all at once by conquering certain fears. I know that did that for me. I was terrified of public speaking when I started. I remember when I had to do presentations in school, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like scared. I was like so jittery. And over time, now it's just easy. Like I have no problem doing it. Between stand up, between obviously being on radio, it's like second nature to me. It's no big deal. And in terms of embarrassment, yeah, I'll get embarrassed sometimes or whatever if a joke doesn't work. But even then, I'm just like, I think at the very least, what it does is it'll like kind of make you realize how irrelevant embarrassment is. Like if you embarrass yourself, who cares? Just keep going. Doesn't matter. Just keep pushing forward. And eventually you come out a better person. Now that's me. Not everybody's like that. If you've seen some of the stand-ups I do shows with sometimes, I'm sure you might, I don't know how often you've been to a live show or anything like that, or have gone to a local show. There's some people up there who are clearly mentally ill and who should not be doing what they're doing. But I think that there's a good portion of them who come out the other side a better person in a lot of ways. Even if stand-up doesn't work out for them, they pick up a lot of skills that they would not have picked up on otherwise.
Agreed. How do you prepare yourself for the stage?
My friends have described me as like not fun before I go on stage, but then I'm fun afterwards. Cause I'm very much like, especially if it's a big show. Like that the clip that I posted that went kind of viral there about me speaking Aramaic, that was recorded at the Halifax Comedy Fest like in 2023. And I remember before that set, I guess is the best example, I was terrified because that was a different level. I was performing, one, it's my first TV taping. Two, it was in front of 500 people. And three, it was the first time my parents were going to see me do stand-up. The first time. And that was the only time I was going to let them do it. I was like, that's it. Like you came, and maybe another time I'll let you come one day when I have to do a clean set. But otherwise, I was scared and I was pacing. But I guess that's what it is. I have to be scared before I go on stage. And then when I usually get on stage after building up all that fear, the set is so much better. You just kind of rise to the occasion. I've never done well when I've gone up on stage. Like, no, yeah, I got this. Like, I've never gone well. Like, don't worry. This is going to go great. And if I go up there, it never does. So I have to go up with a certain amount of fear. So I tend to pace. I tend to mouth my jokes to myself, get that done. Okay, let's reverse the order here, this and that. Maybe we'll end off on this instead of that one right there. And that's usually how I do it. So I just panic a lot is what I do.
Until it's showtime and
then we go. With that. And then we go. You never know otherwise. I'll get up on stage and it'll be like, wow, this guy's like really confident. And inside I'm just like, no, I'm not.
What has been your proudest moment thus far?
Man, that is tough. There's a lot of proud moments. Honestly, that set that I was talking about, the Halifax Comedy Fest, was huge for me just because it was my parents who came to see me. And if they weren't there, it would have still been fine. I probably have other moments, but that was a proud moment to me because when I started stand-up, my parents were equal parts resistant and confused because they were like, what are you doing? You have to get a real job. You're wasting your time with this stuff. But then they were also confused because they were like, you're not funny. What are you talking about? Because I was a quiet kid growing up. I was more of an observer. Everybody else was loud and very funny and silly people, and I was just kind of watching everybody, just taking notes in my head. And it was not like that just with my parents, it was like that with my coworkers. As soon as they found out I did stand-up, they were like, Chris does stand-up? He's not funny. What are you talking about? He never said anything. And it's because like off stage, if I'm around people, I'm very calm. I'm very just like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'll just act normal. It's like, I'm not on stage right now. I'm not going to act like a psychopath and then tell you my thoughts on everything. So that was a very big moment for me because they were equal parts resistant and confused. And then when I got off stage and I saw them later that night, my mom and dad were like, we get it. Like, we get it. Like, this is what you should do. And it was a very big moment for me. That was huge, just to finally get the support of my parents. So now every time I go do gigs, they're like very much like, yeah, go kill it. And then when I come back, my dad's like, how much did we make? Like, when do I get my cut? I'm like, you don't get anything, dude.
Oh, I love that. I love that your parents have been supportive of you. Not initially from the beginning, but
And
they
right,
saw you, they saw your
yeah,
talent.
absolutely. And rightfully so. Like, I mean, if you find out like your child wants to pursue this insanely volatile industry, they are right to be concerned. Absolutely right to be concerned. But like, it's starting to work out. And now, like, they're very much like they're trying to give me ideas for jokes. Like, oh, you should talk about this. And I'm just like, and like my dad will just like give me an idea, and it's not even an idea. It's just like, I was trying to buy a car from a guy on Facebook Marketplace, and it was just, it was a weird negotiation. I'm like, well, what happened? And then it never goes anywhere. I'm like, I'm not gonna talk about that. But that's all love. I love them for that.
Let's talk about that show a little bit because something I noticed in some of the clips that I've watched of you is like I notice you don't shy away from your Assyrian heritage and bring it up often, whether it's on stage or through YouTube on your bio there. So that to me, when I see that, like that's a choice at the end of the day. Why is that important to you?
Very important to me, man. I mean, I never thought about it too much in my teens and my early 20s. It wasn't until my late 20s and when I got into stand up, and I think this is another benefit of doing stand up, is I started to really find out who I really am. Because when I started comedy, I thought I was going to be an edgy, dark guy or whatever. And then as soon as I started, I was like, that's not who I am. And then I kind of figured out what I was through it. And what I figured out was what sets me apart, what makes me different from a lot of the comedians I do comedy with is my background. And the fact that we come from the Syriac, Aramean, Assyrian community. And I started to really think about that. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of people out there who can speak, the native tongue of Jesus. And there's not a lot of people like us out there. We always have to do that clarification thing where we say not Syrian, Assyrian or whatever. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, no, I want to let people know what we are. I want to like put it out there so we don't have to constantly tell people or correct people. And so it's become a very important part of me. I don't know if this is answering your question, but I don't know. It's just like a thing I can't even describe. I'm just very proud to be what I am. I'm very proud of our people. And anytime I go visit my family, anytime I go see my family overseas, I just leave with so much love in my heart for like, our culture. And I'm very grateful for what we have.
Yeah, no, that absolutely answers the question. And I don't know, I think of it as like we all have a part in terms of how we represent our heritage and how we let others know about our heritage. And so I love that through comedy, each time that you're on stage, you have that opportunity to let people know. And I'm sure majority of the people sitting there have
Oh,
no idea and they'll just have learned something new. So I think it's a great opportunity. So
no
thank you
clue.
for doing that.
Oh, no worries at all. It is funny too because like I perform in Canada like almost exclusively. I don't have my visa to the States yet or anything like that. But so most of the audiences are Canadians, white people, and all that stuff, and they don't know. But what was interesting is I did a show in Ottawa recently, and I opened for a famous Lebanese comic named John Ashar, and he does his entire act in Arabic. And we did a sold out theater in Ottawa, 750 people. So it's all Middle Eastern people, all Arabic speaking people, and not just Syria, not just Christians, Muslims as well. And when I got up on stage, usually I have to explain what Aramaic is, like for people who don't know. As soon as I said I spoke Aramaic, everybody started applauding because they all knew immediately what it was. The Muslims, everybody knew exactly what it was. And I was like, that's different. I've never had that before. And that that gave me a high right there. I was like, that is so cool. And I was talking to people afterwards and they're like, yeah, like we all know. And like, you know, it was really cool. I really loved that. I didn't really have to do the legwork for them. It was kind of nice that they already knew it. So hopefully we can get like, you know, white people to catch up as well.
Yeah, so nice to feel seen in that way.
Yeah.
Chris, what's next for you?
What's next? I mean, I'm writing a lot of new stuff. I've got a lot of shows coming up locally and in the Atlantic region, but this year I want to do some more shows in Ontario, and I'm going overseas to see my mom's family this year as well. And I'm hoping to do a couple of shows in the UK as well. I actually had a couple of Assyrian comics reach out to me from the UK, being like, if you're ever here, like we'll do shows with you. I'm like, yes, I would love to do that. So right now it's just building, because like I'm 8 years in. Like you had Paul Aaliyah on, and I love Paul, and he's so established right now. He's like in the States, he's killing it, and I'm so happy to see that. And I'm on the come up still, so just getting better. Like the goal for me eventually is probably to go down to the States at some point, but in the short term, I'm 8 years in. I think year 10, I want to record something, a special / album type thing. And the reason why I say album is because the Canadian comedy industry is pretty tough, where it's hard to make a real living at this unless you're a writer for This Hour Is 22 Minutes or something like that. So one thing that people do is they record albums, and if their tracks get played on Sirius XM, I don't know how, but they get paid an ungodly amount of money for it. It's like passive income, but you don't have to worry about rent or anything like that. You could just focus on comedy. So if I can do that, if I can record an album, get it up on Sirius and all that stuff, that could be like good passive income where I can really start touring and going for this. So in the meantime, just keep on joking, keep on loving, and keep on representing my people. So I'm getting new followers now. It's awesome. I'm getting reached out by a lot of Assyrians, older people. It's beautiful. And it's based off that joke. And I'm very, very happy. One thing I want to just like, if anybody follows me, anybody hears me or from this podcast, I love you guys. Just a heads up. I do sometimes on stage get dirty. Like it's not all clean humor. That's really, as long as you guys understand that and get that, welcome aboard. If not, no worries. But it's not just like wholesome, like, oh, he's just going to talk about our people. It's like, that's a small part of it. Towards the last 10, 15 minutes of my set, it can get a little, I think my brother said, wow, you really are a pig. So just so we all know,
hey,
like we're on the same.
That's comedy.
That's comedy, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all and it's funny if you talk to any of like, you know, I talk like, you know, to my ummos and all that stuff, and I'll be like, oh, you guys are such like pigs. You know what I mean? So it's like anybody pretending we're not otherwise, we're all human. We all joke about everything.
Chris, we have listeners from all over the world. If you could say one thing to all of those listening, what would you say?
I don't know. I think just let's just be a little bit kinder and gentler with one another. Let's not I know there's like a divide within our community sometime over our identity. I think at the end of the day, you know, let's just love one another. Let's just relax a little bit. I would say, you know, you whatever you think you are that. Okay, we're all part of we're just all trying to figure out life. All right, we're all just trying to get through this. So let's just love one another. And you know, I love you guys. I love you all, even if you don't love me, even if you're angry that I also identify as Assyrian. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. You're right to be angry. Whatever you think, you're right. This is the way I am in relationships as well. It's just like, whatever you think, you're right. I'll never fight back. I'm like, no, you're right. You're right. So now that's about it. I just, you know, I don't really have much to say other than like, you know, hey, love one another. Like, you know, be proud of who you are, be proud, and keep the language alive. That's really what I would say.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it out to someone who could benefit from listening. We'll catch you next time for episode 219.